Hello everyone, my name is Abdul-Majid, and in this video I will be teaching you about the Bosnian War. The Bosnian War was an international conflict that took place in Bosnia and Herzegovina between 1992 and 1995. Many people think Bosnia and Herzegovina are two different countries, but simply put, they're just two different regions in one country. Generally, they share the same culture, but more Croats live in the south bordering Croatia. Not everyone in this country is Bosnian. It's actually 48% Bosnian, 33% Serbian, 15% Croatian, and 4% other. All these different people basically understand each other with their languages, and the only difference is how their language is written. Despite the fact that this war was among the most tragic and brutal, it isn't remembered the way major wars of the 20th century are. This is most likely because the other major countries didn't get involved until the end of the war. By now you can tell that there are many different people living in this country, and to make it worse, they all have different leaders with different goals in mind as to what they want for the country as a whole. This obviously started many conflicts called the Yugoslav Wars that began to divide people into different regions all over the country. Now, before the whole war broke up, there was a country called Yugoslavia. In the 1980s, its economy turned for the worse, ethnic tensions began, and nationalism began to grow. Also, with the fall of communism around the world, all these things contributed to what would become the Yugoslav Wars, which essentially became the breakup of Yugoslavia. After all the many conflicts that took place and people knew which side they were on, the war had officially started. The Bosnian War was between the Yugoslav army units, also known as VRS, on one side, and the Army of Republic of Bosnia and Herzegovina on the other side. To make it easier for everyone, from now on I'm going to call the Yugoslav army the Serbs and the Bosnia-Herzegovina army the Bosnians. Trouble first arose when Bosnia was recognized as an independent country by the European community and the United States. The Serbs who opposed the creation of a Bosnian state within their territory began to bomb major cities in Bosnia and also took hold of large areas of Bosnia in order to form Serbian territory. The Serbs mostly hated Muslims, for they were urged on by a televised publicity campaign that incited against the Muslims, who were described as fundamentalists who aimed to slaughter the Serbian nation. The Serbs' main goal was to purify their land. By that, they needed all Muslims, non-Serbs, the wealthy, and anyone who opposed them wiped out. Any other civilian was forced into closed-chain cars and sent to areas ruled by Bosnia. These actions caused a mass exodus of Muslims. The exact number became 1.4 million by November of 1992, and this number grew as the war went on. This was the worst refugee crisis in Europe since the World War II. From that point on, the Serbians conducted a genocide against Bosnians living in the area under their control. Very early on, they had begun to segregate between Muslims and Croatians in northwest Bosnia and began to send Muslims to concentration camps. The prisoners in the camps were beaten, denied food and water, housed in horrific conditions, sexually assaulted, tortured, and finally they killed them. The war in Bosnia was widely covered by the world media, and world public opinion denounced actions of the Serbs. Despite this, no major step was taken to end the genocide. The mass killings continued until finally the United States decided to step in mid-1994. The United States offered economic incentive in exchange for a peace agreement. A rift was created between Serbia, headed by Serbs in Bosnia. Violence continued until August of 1995, when NATO forces began attacking the Serbs from the air, which led to the Serbs surrendering and the end of the war in Bosnia. The Dayton Accords, signed after the war, split Bosnia into separate Serb and Muslim autonomous regions. It was originally estimated that at least 200,000 people were killed and more than 2 million displaced during the 1992-95 war. Many soldiers and civilians suffered health effects like PTSD and 70% higher chance of committing suicide. On top of all that, they suffered from stress and economic impact. In conclusion, the war had many casualties and greatly affected history, for it had tremendous negative impacts on the countries that fought in it, as well as the civilians of those countries. The war had many human rights violations, including genocide and ethnic cleansing.